Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Business Over Brews. I'm excited because Paul Bongers and I are back to help answer questions about deploying AI strategies, and how businesses and people are using AI in their everyday lives to better the things that they do. Between Paul and I, we've got about 30 years of experience between sales, marketing, and strategy leadership. So, Paul, thank you again for joining me on another episode today.
Always a pleasure. My favorite place to be.
Well, I'm glad. Well, it's the weekend, right? We could be doing other things here on the weekends, but this is even better. I love doing this. Hopefully, the kids stay quiet. But today, we're going to be looking through the top 5 questions that we found that people and businesses have about AI and AI tools and how they're deployed pretty much across businesses. So, the first question that I'm going to ask you, and I'd love to get your opinion on, is how can businesses accurately measure the ROI of AI investments? I have an opinion here in how I've started to approach it, but Paul, I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, this is a tough question. And, I mean, maybe for the audience to know, like, I'm from the Netherlands, Dutch. And so we're very much famous for our direct answers and just saying where we think the truth is. And I think the truth is, like, I haven't seen anyone do this well. I've come across many attempts, and they all have the same type of ingredients. Everybody's looking for metrics and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, like it's such a rat race going on right now. It's really, really hard. I think if we look what's happening right now in the world with AI, I like to compare it to how the transportation industry went from horse driven to car driven. There were a lot of horse companies who got horses all over the place to get people around. And then we have cars. If you're a horse company, and now how do you turn that into a car making company? It's a complete, how do you even measure the success of that? Like, it's a paradigm shift in an industry. Everybody will be working with AI in the future, just in the same way that we're now driving cars to work and not on horses. Um, and it's hard to measure it. I think every company needs to find it out for themselves and have a good close look at the industry they're in and how they're being disrupted and whether or not they can keep up with and find metrics around that. So
No,
I
of
wish I
course.
would have a clear answer, but I would be lying if I say, like, here is what it is.
No, I feel you here. So I have two kind of perspectives on here, and it really breaks down to what use case you're focusing in and whether or not you can develop soft or hard metrics. So, for example, I'm in product marketing. I work with sales. I help with product messaging, value discovery. I'm helping writing a lot of messaging, and when I deployed a GPT to my sales team, which we explained, we ended up saving them about 50 grand based on the hours we saved. So I recommend clicking below and watching that video if you're interested in how I deployed that. The only way I was able to identify the ROI and success metrics of that were through soft metrics of surveys. I had to ask and interview people. So I just used the general Google survey, Google form to get some information off of some key questions that I asked to help understand hours saved, types of use cases that they're going with. But now, if we want to talk about the hard metrics, the only way I can think about this again is if you look at the use case. That might be easy in digital marketing, where I can say, hey, these messages in this campaign were AI generated, and now I can compare that batch against the non AI generated batch and actually prove out A B testing metrics. But to your point, other than that, it's substantially difficult to understand the true value, impact, and overall ROI in the organization with today's kind of measurements, if you look at it that way. Those are the only two ways I can think about measuring those two different impacts.
And we'll come up with stuff, and I'm not too worried about that. Every industries have been disrupted,
Yeah.
as long as we know, and it always starts with some arbitrary metrics and then ultimately something that sticks.
Yep.
If you would have asked like 20 years ago, you would look at, like, before the whole SaaS boom, I think nobody in Wall Street would ever, ever, ever look at, like, what are monthly active users and how is this important? They didn't even think about, like, because the concept didn't exist yet. Only when SaaS became a thing and a lot of these companies went public without having a profitable business model, all of a sudden these kind of soft metrics were accepted as were understandable for investors, and they would put their money in based on it.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I think right now there is a change happening. You need to put something in place to understand what your investment is and in what kind of way you want to see a return on it. But I think time will tell.
Eventually, it's going to have to prove those ROI
Yeah.
metrics, right? So let's go straight into question number two, and that is, I feel like this one's I don't know, easy but also confusing. Who is liable when AI-driven decisions result in significant harm or loss? What happens when you generate something that makes people mad or offended or potentially generates litigation that isn't true and puts someone in jail? Like there's a lot of harm that can come from using AI generated content if you're not careful.
So maybe based on my answers that I've given, you may have seen it's like I'm actually also a historian,
Nice.
and so if I look at these kind of questions, I understand when there's a lot of disruption in the market, people start to think like, "Oh my God, everything is falling apart." But you will find that some things just remain to be true. They were true yesterday, and they will be true tomorrow, and that means that liability always ends where it always ended. If you put content out there that is harmful, you are, whether that's created by AI or by a human, it's your responsibility as a business. And legislation hasn't changed around that. You cannot just point at, yeah, well, the AI did it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like whether it
Yeah.
was the intern or it was, or Joe who's been there for 45 years. Liability doesn't change.
No, it's true.
You are responsible for what you put out into the world.
No, honest, 100% agree with you. The only time I've seen that change a little bit is I remember when Copilot was starting to introduce their enterprise solutions. They did put some protections in the terms of service to help protect the end consumer or the business from things like copyright claims and other limited liability items. But again, ultimately, if you put it out there, that means you've stamped that approval, regardless of who generates it. The business or the person that generates it is ultimately responsible. There's no getting around that. So I absolutely feel with you.
Like remember was it back in the 90s when like I don't know if it's even the story was true about, but the microwave and the cat, a lady put her cat in the microwave because the cat was wet and killed her cat. And then it was mandatory to put it into the legal disclaimer that you should not be putting your cat in the microwave. So you should not be putting cats in microwaves. There's a disclaimer on every cigarette pack saying that smoking will kill you, and there's a disclaimer on an AI that an AI can make mistakes, and
There's
this is how we cover our ass. If you watch Snow White, the original movie, it starts with a disclaimer that it might not be appropriate anymore.
true.
Some things that we've become enlightened to certain things, and that was not the case back then.
Yeah.
So we'll put some kind of disclaimer on that. Who watches, like, look at all of these medical commercials that are out there, for all kinds of stuff that end with someone rattling off the list of disclaimers that's just been getting longer and longer and longer over time, because sometimes it's easier to just cover your ass that way instead of actually improving the product.
No, and you know what? The thing is, everyone knows you don't put cats in the microwave. You put them in the dryer. That's the best way to dry them. Please don't. Disclaimer. Don't know who's watching. You don't. They will dry on their own. I have 3 cats. They've never gone in the dryer.
Perfect.
Yes. So there's another example of I will be responsible of that content, regardless if it was AI generated or not. So, next question here. How can businesses ensure ethical and unbiased use of AI at scale? And this can be challenging, but I actually feel like a lot of these tools, the LLMs, are solving that based on their own governance models of, like, hate speech or violence and different types of sliders. That's really so far one of the best ways, for my opinion, in making sure that the source content you train and tune it on is free of those biases and ethical issues. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Paul.
Well, again, like, I think some things just don't change. I like to, like, in these kind of situations, I like to replace the word AI with intern, because for me, an AI is kind of like an intern, or
Yeah.
like maybe someone who just graduated, who has a lot of life skills, can do a lot of skills really well,
Yeah.
but is not yet versed in the language of your company or how you do things at work. So someone who's junior on the job needs handholding, and you cannot always expect them to do it well. So in this case as well, like, how can a business ensure ethical and unbiased use of juniors, you know, is by teaching them and by checking on them, and don't let them just put things out there in the wild, but make sure you have some kind of review process. Because again, back to the previous question, liability will still end. The buck ends at the top. right?
Yep.
So, and that doesn't change with AI. Whoever creates your content, whoever performs your tasks in your business, someone will be held responsible. So I would say, obviously, models are getting better and better and better at being more ethical. They are. If you keep the training that they get very raw based on all the information on the internet, it will inherently be a little bit more of a let's say a doomsday reflection of what society really is, because there's a lot of negative stuff on the internet.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's
Um,
what gets clicks.
it's what gets clicks, but yeah, like ultimately, like if you let an AI just do whatever is on the internet, then it will be inherently probably racist and full of porn. Um, that's that's what the internet is a lot about. But in reality, like these models, they've been trained to be filtered out. There's ethical filters on it. I know that's a
Yeah,
hot topic right now, whether or not. But you as a business, you're responsible, and you can tune your models, and you can instruct your. There's a lot of different tools coming out that you can hook up with your AI with tool
yeah,
calling to make sure that your content is filtered for inclusive language or like any kind of other things. So there are tools out there, and you should invest in that as a business, because
absolutely.
that's how you do it. In the same way that everybody has to do all these kind of like safety trainings and other, like, being discrimination in the workplace kind of training.
Yeah.
We train people. AI is also a creator and a doer of tasks in the business. So you should also train them.
You got to treat it like a person. And you and I are well versed in content and AI governance tools. So, not that we have to go into that, of course. But
Mhm.
let's go on to question number 4. This one's a bit tough. How should companies balance AI driven automation with workforce retention and employee reskilling? This, I'd love to get your opinion on, because I have some thoughts that kind of, they can be, some are harsh, some aren't. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
I think first of all, AI is here to stay. So the worst thing you can do, let's start with what you shouldn't do, is stick your head in the sand and say that it all will blow over and it's not as big as we think it is. It is big. If you think it's not big, you haven't done enough homework, because every day, every week, like it's hard to even like keep track. It's a fire hose of information and new tools and new models and whatever that's coming out. It's improving every time. Even if you just look at like a monthly check-in of like how things have improved, it's absolutely crazy. So it's here to stay. And so what I would say, like, if you want to give your workforce the chance of really being a workforce of the future, let them use all the AI tools you can possibly get your hands on. Let these people become AI native. It needs to become almost a language that you speak. Um, Back when Google became a thing, became big, at that point as well, let your employees all tell them, like, Google it first before you think something else, because get used to these tools. Think what you can do. If you're
Yeah.
a designer and you work in Figma all day long, what you need to do is right now spend at least a few hours a week just on researching all the tools in UX design and how all these things are happening, and get really versed in them,
Yeah.
because they will change the way you do your work. I don't think your job will disappear per se, but if you don't know how to use AI in your work in the next few years, you might just find yourself on a different side of the conversation. And I think
Yeah.
those people who do know how to use AI in their work, they will have, I think that's the workforce of the future. So the best thing you can do as a company is get your people comfortable about any AI tool that they can possibly get their hands on, and let them be part of this top 1% of users
Yeah.
of AI.
No, I I feel you. It's a hard truth to sometimes to digest when you really think about it. My my opinion's similar. The thing is, I have to take an opportunity. I have to take the moment to realize that I come from a serious place of privilege. Right, I've been lucky enough to grow up in a household with two parents that stayed together. I never had to worry about where I'm going to eat or have a roof over my head. I've always had the opportunity to work and drive a reliable car, enough car to get to work, to be a reliable employee. The advice I'm going to give is not something that's going to help someone who's working 2 3 jobs, that's barely trying to make ends meet, that's doing the best that they can. And we have to realize that the introduction of AI cannot disrupt and push that gap of incomes further apart for these folks. We need to develop a world that will help people not have to slave away just to get by. The other side of the conversation, though, is there are a lot of people out there that just don't have the motivation and they're more than able bodied to, and they have the time, even though they think they don't. So if you're the kind of person that likes to sit down and watch Netflix while you scroll TikTok on your phone eating DoorDash, and you're not taking this time to learn about how AI is going to disrupt your job, you're going to get unseated and you're going to get what you ask for if that's what you're doing. I'm in product marketing. There's no doubt in my mind that my role, I would be lucky if it's here in 10 years, if not 5 years. With the amount and the speed that these tools are transforming the workforce, it's impossible for me to see another outcome where my world is completely turned upside down by AI. So what do I need to do? I need to learn how to be the shepherd of that AI to my teams, to teach them how to use it, to get them the opportunities and the efficiencies that we can see through AI. So being that person of constantly learning is pivotal for you and your own career. And the thing that people forget about is we're still in the infancy of this. Like we're hitting the hype cycle, and we're, parts of it, we're coming down in this crash, a bit of the trough of disillusionment. I feel like we hit that kind of that timeline multiple times with all these different AI tools. But people still have to realize we are so early. You still have time. You're not too old and you're not too late. You just have to do. So shut off Netflix, put TikTok down, heat up a bowl of ramen, and just get to work with these free tools. It's the best advice I can give, and then figure out a way to make sure that we can work in a world either through, not a fan of all government regulation, but things need to be done to make sure that people are still taken care of, regardless of education level and the means to provide. So a bit harsh for some folks, but we still need to be able to take care of those who are going to need to be taken care of. I don't have good answers on how else to do that at this time until we see more transpire.
I think you make a really good point, and it's in our human nature inherently to be lazy. That's how we got very efficient.
Yep.
That's how we became a very successful species.
Yes.
Because we find shortcuts, we find efficiencies to be able to do more with less. And why I'm saying that is this doesn't have to be hard. What you just said is so true. Like, take a bit of time and research for yourself. What will this mean for the kind of job you have? And the irony of that is you can kill two birds with one stone with that, which is ask AI.
100%. Use it
Go
as
to
your own assistant.
ChatGPT, go to Perplexity and ask it, go to Claude,
Yep.
ask it, or Gemini, and ask it like, hey, this is the job I do right now. And how would you think that AI will be changing the work that I currently do? And what do you think I should do next? I find it's brilliant how AI can help you prepare for an AI future.
Yep.
Because it gets you a lot of answers up front. And if you do this for like 5 or 10 minutes, you'll actually see that your mind starts to open up. And it's a great starting point. And why it's two birds with one stone? One, you'll learn about what AI could do to your job in your future. And two, you're starting to become AI native. You're starting to use AI. Use AI to solve for yourself the thinking problem of what your future could look like, and start using these tools. That's I think a brilliant way to get started. 100%. And then go back to TikTok and Netflix and get your ramen going.
Yeah, when you've got more time, then you can go figure out that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to take our last question here. We've only got a couple minutes left, but the last question I'm going to ask you is, what new competitive dynamics will arise from widespread AI adoption? Now, when I look at this, I mean, that can go in a number of different directions. But from my opinion here, ultimately, AI is giving people scale. They can be in more places at once. They can hammer out more messaging faster. They can really amplify the message in their presence because of AI. And additionally, that means that they can use that in unethical ways against business to create more competitive disadvantages to other competitors out there. And again, that also means the spread of misinformation. So I do worry about the flood of AI-generated slop, as we've heard, which is usually more consumer-grade products that people are trying to sell. But I can see AI-generated slop starting to move more into the business side, where we're just inundated with nonsense and hyperscale content that's literally just beating down the doors to get to our eyes. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Paul?
Oh yeah, well, I go back to I think I said it in one of the previous episodes as well. Like AI is more, it's more Iron Man, less Terminator. Um,
Yes.
so why I'm saying that again is um, because if it's more Terminator, then the Terminator stories that we hear out there are like, oh well, an AI agent is an employee who can work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Doesn't get sick, doesn't need health insurance, and maybe costs like like 20 grand a month right now, but that's probably also going to be commoditized to like way less. So that's more of a Terminator kind of world, and maybe there will be some of that, but I don't think it's going to be that much. It's more likely Iron Man. It's going to make us all like it's going to make you much more powerful if you know how to use these things. It's going to help you and your team to do work that you could never be able to do before. And why this is important and a competitive advantage for employees is Iron Man could fly up next to like a fighter jet and battle the fighter jet. You know, us mere mortals standing on the ground without an Iron Man suit, that's not going to happen. But companies are going to expect you to battle a fighter jet.
What? Yep.
So if you are not equipped with your Iron Man suit, if you do not know how to use that kind of stuff, then if you don't know how to use AI, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage. So from an employee advantage, competitive advantage point of view, be wise and learn these tools today. Start being wise at it. Like the younger generations who grew up with computers, growing up with software, now we haven't grown up with social media, etc. They have an edge.
Yeah.
They know how to do certain things. The new generation that's going to come after this, they can code because they won't need to learn code to code, right? They can use cursor AI. They can use all of the other tools that are out there. Lovable, I mentioned it before, where they can just create technology from scratch. They don't have to know C++. Um, you know, so that's what we're looking at.
Yep.
These are super powered kids. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to. Like you just get going now. The other competitive advantages on a more high or macro scale, um, I think because of the way that AI can create products in itself and how it's a self enabler, new AI companies that start from scratch have an absolute advantage over any established companies currently out there.
That's a good
For the
point.
same reason why we don't go to Sears anymore because of Amazon.
I miss
For the same
Sears.
reason that how all of these department stores are under pressure,
Yeah.
because for the same reason why Blockbuster disappeared, right? How can a Blockbuster, you have a business model, you have all of this real estate, you have employees over the entire country, and then there is a streaming service. How do you turn that business model into a streaming service? You need to make radical changes to actually turn a business around like that, and you don't need all of that real estate anymore.
Yep.
That is a huge undertaking, and companies who are not willing or are not in a position to make those kind of changes, they can be disrupted so quickly by just any new AI startup that comes out of any kind of incubator or someone's garage, because they are not hindered by that kind of legacy. They can just move forward fast, no questions asked, and investors will put money in there any day.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, even personally looking at these tools, the only reason why we're able to have this conversation and get these episodes together is because I can now scale myself using a handful of AI tools to capture this, edit this, transcribe this, and help me build content to describe like my titles and my descriptions. That's the only reason why I can do this. The only other
Yeah.
problem is I don't think I'm going to be able to fit in any Iron Man suit anytime soon. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go and see if there's some plus size Iron Man suits out there that we can create.
Extra, yeah, a little extra metal. Paul, this has been amazing. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. We love having these conversations and would love to know from you, what are your top AI questions? What's keeping you up at night? Where do you think the biggest opportunities are? Where do you think the biggest failures or risks are? Would love to know and would be happy to answer those questions for you. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Paul, thank you again.
Awesome, my pleasure.
See you guys. I don't know why I did a wave. I wasn't recording.
I was recording.
I'm kidding. I'm just messing with you. Wanted to see your face.